The chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus, came to the University of Chicago for an off-the-record discussion with community members and students. Joining me now is Jonathan Godoy, who is the president of the College Republicans. Jonathan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, I know the discussion was off the record, but in general, what do you make of the fact that the chairman of the party, which is a very prominent position, is reaching out to students at a time where the 2016 election is rapidly approaching?
Well, I think that post-2012 election, the party kind of saw, at least internally and on the leadership level, that it needs to change a few of its outreach motives and strategies. And I think that it saw that reaching out to not only young students, but minorities, which we had just completely lost in the 2012 election, and we had figured we can probably gain a little bit, was priority for us. As you know, has been mentioned, we lost 70% of the Hispanic vote, 75% of the Asian American vote, and though we made gains on the youth vote, it wasn't significant enough to produce, obviously, a win for us. So we don't want to be a party that is necessarily reliant upon one demographic of the population. We want to broaden our horizons, get a little bit more diversity in us, and hedge our bets, essentially, on elections, and I think that's part of the initiative here.
I see. And so you bring up a very good point, which is this whole notion of what the Republican Party needs to do to win again in 2016. And after their gigantic losses in 2012, where they were not able to win back the White House, the Republican Party released the autopsy. And in the autopsy of the Republican Party, they said, look, we need to reach out to minorities, women, and we need to do immigration reform. Those were like the big headlines. So my question is, this week, Speaker Boehner and Mitch McConnell both said we are not going to get immigration reform this year. What do you make of that, and is that a real setback for the party?
I don't think so. I think that the consideration for postponing immigration reform was more of an electoral consideration. People have made the argument that in the 2014 midterm election, when you're just trying to bring out your base, why are you going to throw in an issue that could potentially, throw them off and not inspire them to vote for you? So, in an election year, I wouldn't mainly consider this as a rejection of immigration reform in the future, so much as just an electoral consideration.
So it might happen after the midterms.
Correct. I mean, there was enough incentive, I feel, in 2013. However, that got pushed out of the way because of other issues, namely Obamacare and questions about budgets and debt ceilings. But in 2015, theoretically, in an off-year election, I think that it may be on the table. There's definitely a lot of initiative and a lot of interest. We have Representative Paul Ryan,
right,
among others, who are interested in constructing policy around this, and leadership is too. So I think that this is not a dead issue.
And finally, I want to ask you about the nomination process for President of the United States, especially in the Republican Party. Many have said that one of the problems with the way Republicans nominate a candidate is that it seems like the people who run are just trying to get bigger contracts with Fox News, and basically they're not interested in becoming president. They don't think they have a chance to win. I'm pointing to people like Sarah Palin, Newt Gingrich, Mike Huckabee. What do you make of that? And is there a way that maybe those sorts of people can be weeded out of the process earlier so that they're just not piling on other Republicans that actually have a better chance of being elected president?
Well, of the three you mentioned, only one ran, and that was Newt Gingrich. And he had an aspiration to run since essentially 2008. Sarah Palin, Mike Huckabee. Well, Mike Huckabee did run, but he wasn't running in 2008 really as somebody gaining for, I think, a position on Fox News. I'd say that the process in the past has produced issues about messaging, issues about length, and necessarily when it's such a lengthy process, you're going to get people who are either caving too much to the right or making statements that will long-term affect them and harm them. And I think that's part of why we're reforming the process now.
To shorten the length of time
correct.
that they can run.
Whether or not this is like a persistent issue about people trying to game the system just to maybe promote a book,
right,
or ultimately get a lucrative contract with a news organization, I don't think that's maybe a pervasive problem. It may be a secondary issue, but the reforms are really put in place so that people are more on message and there's not this mudslinging that will ultimately hurt us long term.
Okay, thanks so much for joining
Awesome.
us today,
Thank you so
Jonathan.
much.
Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.